We're very excited to host you for the North Central Mini Land Grant Conference, albeit virtually this year. My name is Meagan Kaiser, and I'm the CARET delegate for the College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources here at Mizzou.
Good morning. My name is H.C. Russell, and I'm the CARET delegate representing the University of Missouri Extension. Since we're virtual this year, we still wanted to share a little bit of our campus with you. Please join us, or please watch the short video for a brief taste of our campus.
It wasn't fate, happenstance, or even luck that got us here, but a hunger for something everlasting. A way to see what others couldn't, to discover the beauty in perseverance, and to find solutions in the unexpected. Here, in the middle of the middle, where soybeans meet skyscrapers, people meet possibility, and Missouri pride runs from the Ozark Mountains to the northern plains. We cross boundaries to gain perspective, embrace differences to get closer to a solution, research this, solve that, find a way to turn this all around, then challenge everything we thought we knew. Because it's not enough to just talk about what's possible.
You gotta show me.
Show me. Show me.
Show me the world through someone else's eyes, and what happens when chemists tackle cancer. Show me every side of the story, and a new way to keep our planet strong. Show me how to turn research into reality, and get a look at my career while I'm still taking classes. Show me how to go fast, how to find the truth, how to thrive. Show me what you've got.
Good morning again. This is H.C. Russell again. We hope you enjoyed that video and got a little taste of what we appreciate and admire here at the University of Missouri. I consider myself a grateful beneficiary of the land-grant university system. My parents both met here at the University of Missouri. Dad was an alum of the College of Agriculture, Mom over in education, and I was steeped in the University of Missouri and Extension from day one. I had no idea as a 9-year-old kid I was participating as a part of higher education, but that's what 4-H does for all of us. In my career, I've served as a credit manager for a farmers cooperative here in Missouri. That cooperative was actually formed the same year the land grant, the Smith-Lever Act was filed in 1914. We're really pleased with our involvement with CARET and looking forward to continuing to try to make a positive difference.
Thanks, HC. And I'm Meagan Kaiser. Just like HC, my roots go deep here at the University of Missouri. Both of my parents are alums for a few degrees, and I received my degree in soil science and chemistry here. My husband's also an alum, and actually my niece is currently attending the College of Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources. So we're very proud to be Tigers. I am, as I mentioned, a soil scientist, and I work at Perry Agricultural Laboratory with my family. My husband and I also farm soybeans and corn along the Missouri River, and we're raising 2 small children. Our son Mac is 6, and our daughter Nora will be 1 at the end of this week. But we are just thrilled to be here and talking about the land grant mission. And I am going to welcome our first Dr. Moon Choi, who is the president of our university. He first joined us here in Missouri in March of 2017. And he has been an incredible leader and advocate, not only for agriculture here in our state, but learning what the university can do to help improve our industry as a whole throughout the country and really the world. We're thrilled to have Dr. Choi here. He now serves not only as the president of our university system, but since March of 2020, also the chancellor of the University of Missouri Mizzou campus. So we welcome you, Dr. Choi, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, and so many thanks to HC. And it's an honor to welcome all of you to Mizzou, to this virtual conference. And I want to thank my colleagues at CARET, Extension, and at Mizzou CAFNR, our College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources, and especially Dr. Stewart and Dr. Daubert. Also, I could see Dr. Wendy Winterstein on the screen, so I look forward to hearing her talk and for her to share her vision about the future of agriculture and support. Also, a very special thank you to Dr. Carrie Castillo, the director of NEFA, and Dr. Doug Steele, who is the vice president at APLU. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. As many of you, during the past 18 months of the pandemic, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the hard work, the resilience, the support that our incredible folks at our college, as well as Extension and CARET, have provided to Missourians throughout the state, throughout this vast state. And their work, whether it was supporting the broadband effort, extending the education to rural farmers, or providing much needed support for the opioid pandemic, illustrate that our hard work does not go unnoticed. And although it is a collective work by so many individuals, provide such an important impact to our community each and every day. And back in September, I noticed that our extension developed a very innovative COVID dashboard for colleagues at Andrew County Health Department. This allowed the Andrew County Health Department to focus on the treatment of patients suffering from COVID instead of worrying about manual data entry. And at the same time, throughout the state, we have many agricultural experiment stations that were providing for the producers much needed resources that had to be delivered through online resources. And as our good folks were doing this work, they quickly realized firsthand the impact of the lack of broadband in rural Missouri and how that affected so many in terms of the disparities that can create for economic development, educational, and health disparities. In fact, roughly 20% of our population, many in rural Missouri, lack access to high bandwidth broadband. And we are not alone. There are many states that face similar issues. So the time is now. And that's why I'm so proud of our team, led by Dr. Marshall Stewart, to lead the Rural Broadband Initiative that will bring broadband to so many in our community that need it and need it fast. Collectively, as I said, these are the works of so many individuals and groups. But it's the individual that has the dedication and commitment and the commitment to hard work that has made such a big difference to our communities. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Wendy Winterstein. She is the president of an incredible AAU university just up to the north of us, and that's Iowa State University. She's been a visionary leader for 40 years at Iowa State and the last 4 as president. She was a trailblazer from the beginning. She was one of the first female ISU Extension and Outreach Associates. She was the holder of the first endowed deanship at Iowa State in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And she's now the first woman and only the second ISU alum to hold that university's highest office. President Winterstein is leading a transformation at Iowa State, and that transformation will sustain this institution for the 21st century and beyond. And as part of this transformation, her vision has been deliberately included in a strategic plan that is called Innovate at Iowa State. This campaign infuses innovation and entrepreneurship into the curriculum and culture for every single stakeholder that calls Iowa State their beloved institution. Under her leadership, ISU is gaining a national prominence in this field. It was recently ranked number 11th in the country when it comes to innovation, right in the heart of Iowa. ISU faculty under her leadership are also blazing new trails to increase both phase 1 and phase 2 research that's so important for AAU metrics. And students are graduating and finding employment at an incredible rate, 95%, which is one of the highest in the country. She is also the recipient of the 2020 Food Systems Leadership Award from the APLU and the 2020 National Ruby Award for Extension Professionals. So Dr. Winterstein, it's such a great pleasure to introduce you. And with that, Dr. Winterstein, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Well, President Chow, thank you so much. I could return so many of those kind words to you for your leadership at the University of Missouri and for the system leadership as well. It's a pleasure to know you and to work with you. So thank you so much for that kind introduction. I must tell everyone today that it made me smile to run through the list of attendees at today's conference. There's so many familiar names and many memories of colleagues and friends over the years that I've had the opportunity to work with. And the list really represents a very committed and collaborative community in the North Central region. I wish we were together in person to be able to capture again some of those conversations that we would always have and that I remember so well, where we would share our challenges, where we would complain about the administration, and we would also share our hopes and personal stories, simply catch up. So I look forward to that opportunity in the future to see you in some venue where we could actually give each other a hug and catch up. Because this is so meaningful to me, I want to take some liberty here and say hello to a few colleagues and mention a few more throughout my presentation. I want to begin by reminding everyone that I'm an entomologist. And in the land-grant university system, there are quite a few entomologists. And there's a special one here in the North Central region, and that's Dean Tiffany Hang Moss. And I've known Tiffany since she was a graduate student working with a faculty member who I knew in graduate school. Of course, that all seems like yesterday. And I'm so pleased to have watched Tiffany's great success and her leadership now as dean at the University of Nebraska. As an entomological side note, I want to share that Tiffany and I share an interest in the use of Madagascar and cockroaches in our extension and educational programs. Hello, Tiffany. As a faculty member and administrator, I grew as a professional. I grew as a professional through my interactions with Dean Bev Durgan. And Bev is the long-serving Dean of Extension at the University of Minnesota. Bev and I were engaged in integrated pest management together, but also served on many multi-state committees and other collaborative projects. I have to tell everyone that Bev led the reinvention of the Pork Center of Excellence, which is an important collaborative project. And she continues to serve on the board of directors of that center. I will tell you that if we were at an informal reception together, perhaps having a glass of wine, Bev would share some interesting stories about that reinvention. And all I can say today is thank you again, Bev. I think she would say, I still owe her a really big favor. I want to have a special call out to Louise Beeman and Ken Huseman. you two, your loyal and committed service as CARET representatives is truly extraordinary. Thank you for all you've done for our system. It's also good to see Robin Shepard and Jeff Jacobsen and to thank them for the leadership they provide to the North Central region. And I'll say to Robin, one of these days, Robin, you're going to succeed at obtaining the federal investment in water quality and quantity programming that is needed for our nation. Thanks for hanging in there on that topic. And finally, my thanks to our USDA partners, Director Carrie Castile and her team. And of course, I want to say a thanks and a hello to the entire Iowa State team. So again, I want you to know how incredibly valuable the collegiality and camaraderie of the North Central region community was for me. And when I look back now, it's with a clear understanding how important these experiences were. They helped me become a better advocate for the system as a whole, for agriculture, research, and extension programs, and all they do to deliver for the public good. It meant a lot to be able to work together toward common goals, to share our stories from our states we served on how the land grant system was working to make lives in our communities better, and to be able to work closely with our CARET delegates and have them lead important conversations on our behalf, telling their own personal stories. And we heard a couple of those this morning with HC and Meagan. Thank you both. And a big thank you to all the CARET delegates for all you continue to do to lift up our universities in your own unique ways. You make a difference. And Iowa State is grateful to our CARET delegation, as is every university represented in the North Central region. All this together represented a huge advantage when we collaborate for our region and our nation. It's a huge advantage for all of us, this collaboration. And it's been a significant part of my own journey throughout each stage of my land grant career. I hope you feel the same way. I learned important lessons from the North Central community, including how to nourish the best and most positive aspects of our work together. And it remains important now. So to each of you, thank you for all you do to continue the tradition. And again, I wish we were all together in person. Well, the theme for this conference, Leading Change, Creating the Future, is a weighty one and not unfamiliar. And it's been a challenge to think about. I kept asking myself, what haven't they heard before on this topic? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even 50 years ago, what might be a fresh lens to examine this? Well, like it or not, the past year and a half in the middle of a global health crisis has forced us to examine ourselves and our society very closely. Much of it presents an often troubling picture, from a personal and public health view to civil unrest and outrage. The fact is that we live in a world of extremes. Polarization and division confront us on all sides, on issues big and small, on nearly every issue. But as the saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. What if we were to counter the negative extremes with positive extremes of our own making? The extremes that we as land-grant universities know we are capable of. Well, here's what I mean. Last month, I hosted a tent week on our campus. We set up a tent and scheduled a series of events over 4 evenings to catch up on some receptions and celebrations that were put on hold due to COVID-19. And at one of our gatherings, we thanked the leaders of our Emergency Operations Center, which guided us in countless ways through the pandemic. Heroic is not too strong a word for the efforts we saw, and I'm certain you can say the same at your institutions. And a quick call out to Vice President John Lawrence, who accepted the responsibility of leading our COVID planning team. His career in extension made him the very best individual for this important task because he knew how to collaborate. He knew how to listen. He knew how to bring diverse voices from all across campus together into a unified plan. So thank you, John. Well, back to tent week. Of all the conversations we had that evening as we celebrated the work of our Emergency Operations Center, there was one phrase that really stuck with me. In comments about how we were able to prevail through that historically difficult time, the phrase that was brought up was extreme collaboration. Extreme collaboration. That's what it took. From all corners of our campus, every day, for nearly 500 days, the phrase extreme collaboration resonated with me, and I thought about the conference theme and how the two connected. We're land-grant universities. Collaboration and partnerships have been hardwired in on us from the very beginning. I'm hopeful that a lesson we learned in the past year and a half is that if we come together and prevail against a global pandemic, then there's very little that we cannot accomplish. We're proven over and over again, we've proven that we're up to the task. We're capable of raising the bar on collaboration and adding that spirit of doing what needs to be done that we saw on all of our campuses during the pandemic. We saw the spirit of innovation and creativity in our researchers and our extension professionals who did not waste a good crisis, who saw the crisis as an opportunity to collaborate and innovate, to roll up their sleeves and develop new kinds of tests, vaccine technology, information delivery, and ways to continue to connect to our stakeholders and those who needed us. And we had a phrase for that at Iowa State too, innovation in overdrive. We serve, we lead, and ultimately we excel by constantly innovating. Extension and the experiment station and our colleges of agriculture and our colleges of human sciences, they excel at collaboration through our multi-state committees, our projects, our national program priorities, partnerships with city, county, and state agencies, commodity boards, business and industry. We excel at this. But what does extreme collaboration look like for us in the land-grant university system, in extension, in our traditional programming? Well, I think there are many good examples of extreme collaboration that we could review, but I think it's important to evaluate again how we take our talents in extension and the experiment station and our colleges of ag and human sciences, and we take those talents in collaboration and innovation and take those back to our university as a whole in a bigger way than we have in the past. How do we pull talent from the entire university to help our stakeholders, to help our state? How do we join in on innovative projects? We are all seeing over the past decade or so how the academic disciplines have come together in amazing ways to find solutions and opportunities. Engineering impacting biology in a very big way. It's just one example. And funding agencies are seeing the success of these collaborations, and they are also collaborating, leveraging resources with each other and with the private sector to address critical national priorities. A recent example of success of this integration occurred last week when the National Science Foundation and NIFA established a funding partnership on one of the artificial intelligence institutes with funding from USDA NIFA to fund 2 AI institutes focused on agriculture. And one of these was in the North Central region. So when we think about opportunity, we see artificial intelligence, something that's going to change all of our lives in many, many ways, and certainly is changing agriculture. And so now we have AI Institute focused on agriculture in the North Central region. While it's led by Iowa State University, it includes the University of Nebraska, the University of Missouri, the Iowa Soybean Association, and other public universities. And the faculty include engineers, geneticists, economists, data scientists, and sociologists. A great example of what we hope to see more of in the future, of extreme collaboration at every level. So extreme collaboration is how we flip the narrative from the negative extremes to the extreme kind of effort and commitment that great tasks require. Well, going on with my theme of extreme, I'm going to talk next about extreme empathy. We counter negative extremes by practicing extreme empathy. Making progress on diversity, equity, and inclusion goals continues to be very important on all of our campuses. As president, it will be no surprise to you when I tell you, in polarized times, I hear from people who say we're not doing enough in diversity and inclusion. And I hear from others who say we are doing way too much, more extremes. At Iowa State, our first president, Adonijah Welch, set the stage for us when he was installed in 1869. He said, "The greatest obstacle to all reform is prejudice." And that was in 1869. He fully supported the ideals, educating both the sons and the daughters of the great state, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic status, so that everyone could achieve their full potential and use that knowledge to better their lives and their communities. And at that time, there were only 4 universities in the United States that allowed women to come and study. So this was a significant statement by the first president at Iowa State University. When I was installed as president, I lifted that vision back up. We want to set the very highest standard of making each person feel welcomed and included. And there's a direct link to innovation and creativity. We need the most diverse ideas and perspectives possible. But if people around the table don't feel welcome, or if they feel they can't even approach the table, they won't share their good ideas. They won't feel like they're in a trusted place. And we will have lost something valuable in creating our future. At Iowa State and at all of our universities, we must find a way to thread the needle every day. Find the right path. Find the right balance. It can be amazingly difficult. It means navigating some very difficult conversations on almost every day. But by stretching our empathy muscles, we can work together to make change occur. Change that's good for everyone. That means staying focused on the long game, how we support our university community and recognizing the worth and value in each person, and how we support our faculty and staff in doing their work for the good of our states and our nation. It's heartening for me when I tour some of our campus labs and I see the faces of the scientific teams, the faculty, graduate students, staff, and undergraduates. So many different colors, cultures, and corners of the nation and world represented, all excited about the work, all talking the talk and walking the walk. Our extension programs are doing great work, reaching out to underserved and underrepresented people with science-based education and resources. We must keep making those connections and building those bridges. Extension has been doing this well for over 100 years, facilitating our coming together in community and talking about difficult issues, and we've been successful. Well, next is extreme communication. Here's the main difference between the negative extremes and the kinds of positive service-based extremes we're capable of. Negatives always get the attention, the headlines, the hornet's nest of social media. Communication, we need to up our game in communications and marketing. That's nothing new either. We've been saying it for years. In fact, at the 2017 CARET Administrative Heads meeting in DC, Louise Beeman led a panel discussion on how we could do a better job of communicating the food and ag story and the important role of the land-grant university in that story. That's been one of the most frustrating parts of being a dean and being a president. To go out and speak to the people of your state or to your alums across the country or the world, and you tell them about the great advances we're making in science, in serving our communities, in preparing our students, and they look at you amazed. And they always say, we didn't know the university was doing that. And if I say the phrase best kept secret, 1 million extension professionals will roll their eyes and sigh, or maybe even scream. And if I say many of us are too humble and too nice to brag about our work, how many of you are tired of hearing or even believing that? We have yet to really catch fire and grab the attention we deserve. We have our moments, certainly, but we need more than just moments. At the end of July, somebody reminded me that Iowa State had alumni engineers who worked at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama in the 1960s. Engineers who were involved in developing and building the Saturn V rocket that took Americans to the moon. Many thousands were involved. But you remember that our land-grant campuses had trained professional scientists and engineers in a massive collaborative effort. It's worth remembering and worth bragging about. But how you define extreme communications isn't only about pushing your message, it's about acknowledging others' concerns. It's finding ways to share your own values with the people we serve. How many years now has the Center for Food Integrity and others hammered away at that point? How we must work to give people permission to believe that science, modern agriculture, and food systems can align with their own values. How do we give them permission to believe? That gets down to addressing questions of trust and working hard to establish trust. If we are to be leaders of change and creators of the future, we cannot still believe that science and our data speak for themselves. They don't. They absolutely must be our foundation, but our science and our data need help to bring the message home. And even today, we are trying to understand how to communicate to individuals about the opportunity that the COVID vaccine brings to all of us. So what would we rather have? Knowledge without caring, or caring without knowledge? Dare to think that in an ideal of extreme communication, we want them both. They go hand in hand. Well, next is extreme service. In my own installation speech, when I became president, I emphasized to serve, to lead, and to excel. In fact, after I became president, my personalized license plate reads, to serve. I'm easy to spot in Ames, Iowa. And of course, I have to tell you, some days that's good and other days not so much, especially during the past year. But service, I feel very strongly about. Throughout my career at Iowa State as an Extension Field Associate, as a faculty member, as a program leader in Extension and in our College of Ag and Life Sciences, as a dean, and as president, every stage involved leaving my comfort zone. Leading change, creating the future, The way you do that is to keep leaving your comfort zones, because service to the deep roots of our land grant mission can and will enrich your life. To continue to serve selflessly, to move your mission forward, is to take an extreme action. Once again, I look at our incredible CARET delegates, especially when I see a name like Don Latham. I always think a photo of Don should be in the dictionary next to the definition for service. Next year, Don will have served the state of Iowa and Iowa State University for 30 years as a CARET delegate. Don's been a leader regionally and nationally for CARET, including serving as a national chairman. He's helped develop strategy and strengthened our advocacy efforts on behalf of the land grant system. Don simply cares. He simply works hard. He simply serves. Some might say Don is a unique example of extreme service, but that would be wrong. Don has plenty of company right here in this virtual room and in the roster of CARET delegates nationwide. Once again, thank you all for the relationships you help us build and the messages you help us deliver. To continue to serve in all the difficult situations we are placed, where it seems like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. That takes courage, and we should always choose courage. And that's an extreme action. To continue to serve by making our universities model the kind of partnerships that are productive, highly focused on bringing forward workable solutions, and potentially high return on investment to society, that's an extreme action. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. As many of you know, I'm a native of Kansas. I was recently reminded of the motto of the state of Kansas. It's a Latin phrase, ad astra per aspera, translated to the stars through hardships. I think that phrase holds some meaning for us as leaders, as innovators, as creators of the future. To be able to weather all the negative extremes we face while being a positive champion for the positive extremes that represent our land grant universities at their very best. Collaboration, empathy, communication, and service. That's a definition of hope. Last year, Jericho Brown won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry, and he's been quoted that imagination and hope always go together. Jericho Brown said, "Only the creative mind can make use of hope. Only a creative people can wield it." He wasn't talking about land grants, but he could have been. So practice extreme collaboration and put your innovation into overdrive. Exercise extreme empathy and thread that needle every day through all the differences. Communicate your science and values. Be extremely genuine, but never be extremely humble. Be an extremely hopeful servant leader. And finally, keep the spirit of the North Central region alive and well. From my perspective, I can tell you that what you have is extremely special. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today and speak with you all, and really to give you what I believe is a message of hope for our future and how we can achieve that future together. So thank you very much. It's really an honor and pleasure to be with you and to be in the North Central region program again. Thank you.
You are my favorite extremist that I have ever listened to. This is just wonderful. It has been a long year and a half. And I also sit on the United Soybean Board, and you bringing up Don Latham, you know, he's been involved in CARET. I'm actually a second generation CARET delegate. My mom served with Don, and then I took over her seat. But I do think that one of the things that I am amazed by seeing it on the soybean board is the extreme collaboration and how much that means to foundational research and how much that really means to applied science on our farms, and how critical that is. It's a unique value of the land grant system. But one area that we really struggle with is finding good information. And even in the context of the last year and a half, communication of science and data, what are ways that you think we can improve on that? Because it almost seems more difficult now than ever, even though we have all of these different media streams, social media. What are some ideas that you have that might help us?
Well, Meagan, first of all, please say hello to your mother. What a great leader, what a great friend of the land grant university system. But I think your question is an excellent one. And in this day and age when we don't just get to go to extension publication and know here is the information we need on a particular question. Instead, we are seeing Twitter feeds, we're seeing blogs, we're seeing all sorts of messaging from so many different sources of information. And it becomes very difficult to go through what is the right place to be looking, what is the right information that will help me in my unique situation. And for farmers, and we think about soybean producers across the region, we know we have a great partner in this communication with our soybean boards in our individual states, working hand in hand with our faculty members and our scientists. And I think that really is key, that there is that collaboration, there is that trust, there's that work together to put that information out in a variety of different venues. But yet, to your point, oftentimes that information still isn't found, still isn't where it needs to be. So I don't think there's an easy answer to your very difficult question, but I will say that the answer is truly embedded in the partnerships that we have with growers and their organizations and how we work effectively with them to address that concern.
Another thing that President Choi brought up was the access to broadband and internet. I know in Missouri it's a very difficult situation for rural access. What are some of your thoughts on how that plays out and how that impacts our ability to fulfill the extension mission?
Certainly, rural broadband is a major issue, and I think every governor in our region is probably having conversations and taking actions about rural broadband access. And we know during COVID, at least in Iowa, we had our extension offices as sites where students working remotely could go to that extension office and get assistance, and we worked as a network, as a whole university to serve our students and to serve the state. So again, collaboration and partnership is the key. At Iowa State, we just became a lead on a big rural band test bed research project, and that is going to be important, I think. And when I think about that project and I look at the list of primarily engineers that are on that project, it goes back to my comments in my presentation about how do we, in extension especially, think about reaching into the university in different ways to access some of the talent and to remind a set of faculty that perhaps don't even understand that we have 99 extension offices in the state, that we make and build those connections, that we add this job to the other 100 jobs that we're trying to do every day, to think about in these critical areas how we pull the talent from the university that we need to engage back with extension. And using our old two-way road analogy, right, it brings back in so much value from the stakeholders to a team that's working on something like rural broadband access and doing the work on establishing a test bed for rural access in central Iowa. So it's another job for us, and how we think about that and say we are one university, and how we do some of this work together, especially on these topics that are emerging, where the expertise may not lie completely in a College of Agriculture and Life Sciences or a College of Human Sciences, but how do we as a group go out and access all the talent of the university and ask the entire university to believe in the importance of engagement with their community.
That kind of brings me to another question for you of how do you really engage an entire university system in extreme service?
You know, it is a great question, because that is not how many of our young faculty have been brought up. They have not seen that as their primary responsibility, and it probably is not their primary responsibility. But I think all of us, including myself, how do we do a better job of communicating to the university as a whole that we are an engaged university, we are a land-grant university, and how do we, as a president, remind everybody that service extends beyond the walls of a building or a classroom, and offer the opportunity. Oftentimes it's not so much as an added responsibility, it really is an added opportunity. And again, my comment back to my example I just used of rural broadband and test bed research connections out into the state, I think is an opportunity for that particular project.
I agree. I think one of the things that, as you know, land grants are such a part of who we are as citizens of our state and our local communities. We all know our local extension agents, and that is our connection, and how critically important it was, you know, when Dr. Marshall Stewart came to the university to begin with. I think I saw him at almost every county meeting that I attended for a while, you know, just really engaging in the state, and how important that is to the people that this is, you know, we've lived in the state for generations, and how important that connection truly is. I guess the last thing is what's your, I love the extreme empathy. That's something that I keep telling myself, we just all have to be patient right now, and just patient with ourselves, patient with each other. There's still so many unknowns. I used to say, oh, back in the pandemic, but it almost seems like it's going to be here still for a bit. And what are some thoughts, you know, as your university is looking toward where we are right now and heading into the fall? What are some of your thoughts on extreme empathy?
Well, it really is about some of the lessons that our mothers taught all of us, right? That you have to listen and hear what the other person has said. You have to acknowledge that that's their viewpoint, and it's not about trying to force them to see your perspective. And instead, it's about listening and hearing and engaging in polite conversation versus trying to convert people. And in this difficult, polarized time where nobody seems to be in the middle, the more that each of us can do to listen, at times to explain a particular situation the best we can. I think that's the key. The key has certainly never been, whether it's during COVID time or coming out of COVID, it's never been about taking an extreme position to try to convert somebody to your worldview, because as I mentioned, we've learned over and over again that just doesn't work. You have to share, provide information, hear what their perspective is before you can really get to a place where someone might see the science, see the position that you have.
Well, Dr. Winterstein, I just appreciate the extreme collaboration, extreme empathy, extreme communication, extreme service, and how all of that gives us hope. I think your message is profound and much appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us today. To the rest of the group, we're going to take a break. We'll see you back here on this link at 10:15.
At the University of Missouri College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources, we work to solve the most pressing issues of the day. From entomological pests devastating cattle populations and grape harvests in the 1800s, to environmental, social, animal, plant, and human health issues of today. We've spent the last 150 years investigating issues affecting our state, nation, and world. CAFNR is both part of the top research institution in the state and a land-grant university. Top-tier research at CAFNR goes from lab to field, directly to our producers and beyond. Our ability for collaboration across disciplines is mostly unmatched across the country. We are well positioned to make an impact. Columbia is halfway between St. Louis, a plant sciences biotechnology hub, and Kansas City, the nation's animal sciences research corridor. CAFNR's research enterprise encompasses the biggest industries in Missouri. Agriculture, an $88 billion industry and the state's top economic driver, and tourism, a $17 billion industry. The uniqueness of the climate, soils, and topography of the state of Missouri allow us to research an incredible variety of agriculture and natural resources. We encompass corn and soybean in the Northwest, to cotton and rice in the Southeast, to beef production in the Southwest. Missouri also has two major river systems and a robust natural resources conservation and recreation presence. We are proud to showcase top-tier faculty, including members of the National Academy of Inventors and National Academy of Sciences, who train the next generation of scientists and professionals via exceptional undergraduate and graduate research opportunities. We have robust partnerships with a variety of organizations, state and federal agencies, commodity organizations, and the private sector, which makes certain our research is vital and relevant to the state, the nation, and the globe. We are proud of the research breakthroughs over the years in CAFNR, including spores in soil at Sanborn Field that led to the creation of antibiotic areomycin in the 1940s, and more recently, the heart-healthy high oleic soybean oil, Soylaic, the plant-based protein technology that led to the formation of Beyond Meat and spin-off companies like Elemental Enzymes. We've accomplished a lot over the past 150 years, but we're still always looking to solve what's next on our drive to distinction.
If we want to understand how plants work, we really need the expertise of everyone. So the plant sciences community is really good at bringing those ideas together and make something happen as a team.
The IPG is essentially a community, brings that community together across multiple areas of expertise, from physiology, biochemistry, molecular biology, genetics.
Having USDA scientists in multiple locations on campus is really great to build those collaborative relationships.
That allows us to cross disciplinary lines, cross departmental lines, cross college lines, and allows the community to work together on complex problems to tackle some of the most important questions that are addressing plant biology and crop production in Missouri, in the US, and also worldwide.
The most important thing about plants and biology is that the survivors are the one who adapts to changes. So if we develop plants that are more nutrient efficient, better to tolerate pests, we're gonna make cheaper, safer agronomy to feed the entire world without the need of fertilizers, pesticides, and irrigation. And we need to produce more food for the rest of the world, not only us, for the rest of the world. We are all connected. Missouri is connected, the US is connected. So if we help Missouri, we're going to help the US, we're going to help the world.
Drought is recognized as the most important limiting factor for crop production worldwide. It's therefore very important to understand the physiological and genetic traits that plants use to adapt to drought. And if we can understand those traits, then we can manipulate them and develop plants that have improved abilities to grow under drought conditions.
Cereal grains, which are the types of crops that grow nodal roots, which are the types of roots that we're studying, they're responsible for the majority of caloric intake across the globe. And so if these droughts are becoming increasingly severe and more intense in the areas where we're producing these cereals, there could be some potentially catastrophic events down the road if you can't meet the food demand.
The East Campus Plant Growth Facility provides a major expansion of our abilities to conduct research into important questions in plant biology. The facility provides over 23,000 square feet of state-of-the-art greenhouse space, and also provides a range of controlled environment growth chambers that we're standing in front of at the moment.
What I really love about my work is results. I would hope that my research can have a positive impact on the world, and I feel like the route to that is probably improving people's lives through access to high-quality food.
We have a variety of different growth chambers in this facility, but we have a number of these that have this height extension. And this allows us to grow corn or other like switchgrass, large bioenergy grasses we can grow up to maturity inside controlled environments.
Soybean happens to be an amazing crop that if we understood more could provide more nutrition for people around the world.
The weather in Missouri is really something. So you want to do plant stress biology, this is where you want to be. Very few places have these changes in the environment, from being freezing cold to being hot and humid. Plants can escape from those changes. So the plants that thrive in Missouri have the secret to thrive in changing environments. So the answer is out there. We just need to ask the right questions to get the answers out there.
Are you an agricultural business owner looking to expand your services or company? Or are you an ag entrepreneur interested in bringing your dream operation to life? If you answered yes, then it's time for you to contact the Missouri Small Business Development Centers. Our agricultural business counselors provide valuable services to agri-entrepreneurs facing today's challenges, whether it be through training, one-on-one counseling, or assistance with funding your business. The Missouri SBDC wants to see you take your ideas to the next level. Talk to your local Missouri SBDC or the Missouri SBDC for Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Visit MissouriSBDC.org and talk to us today.
There's very few land-grant universities that have essentially a full package in terms of biomedical and agricultural research with, a College of Ag, a College of Veterinary Medicine, and a School of Medicine.
One of the strengths that we really pride ourselves on in the Division of Animal Science is this theme of bench to barnyard. So we have the complete spectrum of very basic research where we're trying to identify what's happening at the molecular level, whether that's in nutrition, reproduction, or genetics, all the way to very applied research where we're testing and developing new tools for farmers and ranchers to use. So this breadth of very basic to very applied research is a unique strength of the Division of Animal Sciences and really sets us apart as one of the premier divisions of animal sciences in the United States.
I'm interested in curing human diseases. I'm interested in coming up with treatments and therapies for humans. But my heart's really in agriculture, and I want to make agriculture more efficient, address the animal welfare issues, address sustainability issues, all those things that are going to affect the producer. So the National Swine Resource and Research Center was created to be able to make pigs that get human sicknesses or human genetic diseases. And without the ability to have these animals, you're not going to be able to come up with those treatments and therapies that are going to affect people's lives. We have a set of skills here that allow us to do genetic modification in pigs. There's not a lot of places that do this. And so when the people at the National Institutes of Health say, you know, it'd be really good to have a model to study this, they will contact us and we'll then work with them to come up with a pig that will actually replicate the disease situation that they're interested in.
My job is to investigate the genetics and DNA of cattle. And the purpose behind doing this is to create decision support tools, DNA tests, for farmers and ranchers to produce beef more profitably and more sustainably.
A lot of pregnancy loss occurs during early pregnancy that impact both domestic animal reproductive health, but also have a dual impact in terms of women's reproductive health as well as men's reproductive health. We're hoping that this research will accomplish basically helping us solve some early pregnancy loss.
Technology is rapidly changing in agriculture and specifically in the beef industry, and it's creating new tools for farmers and ranchers. So many of the technologies that we think about in social media, human medicine, etc., are being used or are being developed in cattle.
And so there is a natural tie when you're using animal models, not only to enhance agricultural production, but also have a positive benefit in terms of human outcomes, because you can't do those studies in terms of humans.
Porcine reproductive respiratory syndrome virus costs producers in North America about $680 million a year. If you combine that with the losses that occur in Europe, it's about $6 million a day. That was $6 million yesterday, $6 million today, $6 million tomorrow. We have the solution.
We're serving both rural as well as urban populations. And we are impacting a large number of undergraduates at the University of Missouri and providing them with a quality education. And we also are impacting producers as well as individuals who live in the city. And that impacts every facet of life. And that really is what the College of Ag, Food, and Natural Resources is about, is true impact broadly across the state, within the nation, as well as globally.
From Rockport
to Portageville.
From Monette
to Cahokia.
Missourians are supporting Missourians.
We're still coming together.
Just as we have for more than 100 years.
We've changed the way we work so that we can still stay connected.
Using Zoom,
Facebook,
and the local news.
To maintain community.
And bring you the same MU extension.
The courses, events, and services you've come to trust.
4-H, workforce, webinars,
pesticide applicator training,
and creating new resources and tools
to support Missourians.
Families, farms, businesses, and communities.
Mental health.
Food safety.
Telehealth.
A healthy Missouri is our top priority.
We're so proud to be part of communities.
Tackling this new grand challenge.
By supporting access to education.
By helping local economies.
By improving our health and well-being.
By doing what we do best in Missouri.
Show me. Show me.
Show me resilience.
Welcome back. I'd like to welcome now Robin Shepard, who is the North Central Extension Executive Director, and Jeff Jacobsen, the North Central Region Research Executive Director.
I'm the director of the North Central Cooperative Extension Association. I work with Jeff Jacobsen, and together we serve the 12 states of the Midwest region. I work directly with extension directors while Jeff works with the Agricultural Research Station directors. Jeff and I are actually part of a network of regionally based executive directors that include the 3 other geographic regions, also the 1890 land grant institutions. And in the case of extension, we also have an executive director that's been assigned to the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy in Washington, D.C. Land grant universities are well positioned to address many different challenges associated with food systems, agricultural production, community vitality, economic development, natural resources, leadership in audiences such as youth and municipal officials, even addressing nutritional, behavior, mental health needs. Merely, I'm pointing out a few of the examples. There are many others, of course, of the things that we do in terms of the service we provide in land grant universities. For the next segment of our mini land grant conference, we want to focus on a few of the region's most pressing challenges and how we are addressing issues. These range from multi-state responses to working right down at the state and community level. We've identified 3 significant themes that have dominated attention of extension and ag research directors, especially so over the past 12 to 24 months. Now, these are certainly not the only challenges we face, but they are issues that offer great opportunity for multi-state sharing, collaborative responses, and joint problem solving among the land grant universities here in the Midwest. Over the next 75 minutes, we'll be taking a closer look at how we are responding to rural mental health, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and digital agriculture and smart farms. For each of the topics, we've asked a presenter to talk about multi-state and regional responses, joint programs, some examples of how we're working across state lines. And we've also asked a leader from the University of Missouri to explain how it's being addressed locally. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat function, so please be ready to do that. To begin with, the first topic is about how we're addressing rural mental health. Courtney Cuthbertson is the co-director of the North Central Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Dr. Cuthbertson is an assistant professor and extension specialist in human development and family studies at the University of Illinois. The center hosts that center, but it supports activities in all 12 of our North Central states. It encourages collaboration and sharing across our institutions, as well as providing connections to a number of state, regional, and federal agencies that also work with us to address the challenges in rural mental health. The center is quite effective at generating financial support, as you may hear. It's a catalyst for a lot of multi-state work, which benefits all of the land grants in our region. Courtney is joined by Karen Funkenbusch from the University of Missouri. Karen is the director of the North Central Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Program at the University of Missouri. Courtney, Karen, welcome.
Thank you so much. Is my presentation showing on the screen now? Excellent, I see some nods, thank you. Well, I'm honored to be here today to share with you about the North Central Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Center effort, which is funded by USDA NIFA. This is one of 4 regional centers in the US, which originated in the Farm Bill. I co-direct the North Central region effort with my colleague, Dr. Josie Rudolphi at the University of Illinois and Illinois Extension. And I should briefly note that while many farms and ranches are located in rural areas, not all agriculture is rural. So what I will be speaking to is stress and mental health within agriculture, which could be urban, rural, or anywhere in between. So why farm and ranch stress? We know that mental health is worse among people in agriculture than among the general population, unfortunately. Research is varied and methods also vary as people are trying to figure out what mental health looks like among agricultural populations. But what we know is that things like depression and anxiety are much higher among those who are in farming, agriculture, ranching than among the general population. For instance, in the United States overall, about 8% experienced depression in the past year. When we look at the agricultural community, that ranges from about 9% to 53%. For anxiety, a similar story. Among the general population, it's about 1 in 5 people that experience anxiety in the past year. And among the agricultural community, when we look at this, it is from 33 to 71%. And then what has also come up quite often in the media are reports around suicides in agriculture. When we look at the suicide rate in general in the United States, it is 13.9 per 100,000 people. When we look at the suicide rate for men in agriculture, it's 36.1. So the suicide rate for male farmers is 1.6 times higher than the rate for males in the US and almost 2.6 times higher than the overall suicide rate among the general population. And the story for migrant farm workers is somewhat similar. The rates of depression range from 7 to 52%, anxiety in different research studies from 0 to 23%. And although they are not listed on this slide, things like substance use disorder, illicit drug use, heavy alcohol use, and opioid misuse are slightly higher among agricultural populations than in the general population. But when we're considering mental health, we do have to keep in mind that mental health is not only mental illness or poor mental health conditions or outcomes like depression or anxiety or suicide risk. Mental health can be viewed as a spectrum. We all have mental health all the time. Where we are on this spectrum, from poor health to excellent health, changes during the course of our lives and might change during the course of one day. Sometimes the supports that we need are going to vary or depending on where our mental health is in a given moment. So what should people do to support their mental health? Maybe talk to a mental health provider. That might be a good place to start. But unfortunately, what we know about professional mental health and substance use services is that there is not nearly enough to meet demand or need. Those professional services can help people to understand, process, and deal with the things happening in their lives. But what we know is that the majority of United States counties are mental health professional shortage areas, meaning exactly that there are not enough providers to meet the need. Layer this with whether someone has insurance to be able to access care providers that do exist in their area. Layer this with the cost of copays or full cost if someone doesn't have insurance. Layer this with any beliefs that people may have that asking for help is a weakness, or concerns that people will think of them in a negative way, or fears about how other people in town might talk about me if they see my car outside of a mental health provider's office. So it can be very difficult to access a mental health provider in the United States. Knowing what we do about agricultural mental health, we all can be involved in creating supportive communities for people across the spectrum of mental health. And it was with this entire context in mind that we are engaging in work through the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Our primary objectives are to provide stress management and stress assistance resources through 5 activities that you can see here on the slide. One is a regional clearinghouse website to list available resources for farmers and ranchers to be able to manage stress. And our regional clearinghouse website is at farmstress.org. That'll be on a slide coming up in a few minutes. We are partnering with the Iowa Concern Hotline, established in 1985, to provide stress assistance on a variety of topics to farmers and ranchers in the entire North Central region. We also have support groups, such as those that are offered by the Central States Center for Agricultural Safety and Health for Spanish-speaking farm workers. Several states are involved in professional behavioral health services by offering things like a voucher program to have producers have access to mental health professionals at no cost. And finally, training programs which improve stress management techniques, knowledge of signs and symptoms of distress and suicide, and increasing confidence to assist struggling farmers and producers. We do have a monthly newsletter as well, and I'd be happy to help you find how to sign up for that. We do have representation in our Center from Cooperative Extension from each of the 12 states in the region, and we have invited representatives from all land-grant universities in the region to participate through an advisory board. Each organization here also has connections to other agencies and organizations such as state departments of agriculture, commodity groups, county, state, and national level farm bureau organizations, farm credit, and more. The cross-sector networks that Extension builds and creates opportunities for all of us to work and to learn together about best practices and to share new and emerging programs and resources. Just a couple of examples here of programs that are offered through this effort in multiple states across the region. Two of these, one is Mental Health First Aid, another is Question, Persuade, Refer, and both of these are mental health literacy programs aimed at helping people understand how you can reach out to someone who might be struggling. How do I even identify what that looks like in the first place? And then what do I do? How do I ask questions that will be helpful? How do I understand, is this person at risk of suicide? And what do I do if I think the answer is yes? So we have these specific to agriculture. And then as a region, we are also supporting two programs coming from Michigan State University that are specific to agricultural contexts. One of those is called Communicating with Farmers Under Stress, and the other is Weathering the Storm, where people learn how to identify specific stressors in farming contexts, what different stress management techniques look like, and what various resources are that can help farmers in particular. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with all of you. If you have questions or would like to collaborate, suggest a resource for the Clearinghouse website, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter, please feel free to get in touch. My contact information is on the slide, and our website again is farmstress.org. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Karen to share more with everyone about what's specifically going on in Missouri in this effort.
As Courtney said, my name is Karen Funkenbusch, and I'm the director for the Farm Ranch Stress program here at the University of Missouri. Next slide. Okay, what I want to do is, first of all, say thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today to share some basic and brief information about what's happening here in Missouri as it relates to our rural mental health collaborators, programs, services that vary across the state of Missouri for our Farm and Ranch Stress program. Our approach in Missouri for our mental health programs relies on a team approach of MU Extension specialists from various disciplines. Those disciplines in Missouri represent county engagement specialists in agriculture and environment, field specialists in livestock, field specialists in labor and workforce development, and most importantly, field specialists in human development. We also have a significant cooperation with Lincoln University Cooperative Extension, their farm outreach programs, and the small farm specialists from the Innovative Small Farms Outreach Program actively participate and help us provide our programs that are offered at the grassroots level here in Missouri. As Courtney mentioned, states across the North Central region are providing programs. And as you can see, Missouri has a laundry list of programs that we are providing. As Courtney said, mental health first aid, virtual QPR, communicating with farmers under stress, and weathering the storms are programs that Missouri are providing by our MU Extension specialists. So what makes Missouri different? There's one program that makes Missouri a little different about what we are doing as it relates to mental health, providing mental health programs across the state of Missouri. In Missouri, we're presenting a program that's called Taking Care of You. This is a program that is very unique to Missouri. This is an evidence-based program that was developed by MU Extension and is taught face-to-face or virtually by our MU Extension specialists in human development. Taking Care of You is a multi-session program that offers practical strategies and experiences to help individuals deal with stress in life. It also breaks down the sessions into 4 2-hour sessions or 1 8-hour session. Each week, participants explore a different stress management topic through small group discussion, self-reflection, and activities, and learn how to use this awareness for better health. Something that's also unique to Missouri, in my opinion, is that to maximize our efforts, MU Extension and LU Extension specialists also embedded all of our MU health programs and resources into our extension-based agribility, beginners, farmers, and ranchers program, and Heroes to Hives. Those are programs that are specifically geared toward farmers and ranchers and their farm families. Another entity that makes Missouri a little bit different is that the Show Me Farm Safety Committee, which is overseen by the Missouri Department of Agriculture, the Missouri Department of Labor, and MU Extension, proactively provide outreach programs, services, and assistance to our individuals that we work with. Another unique service to Missouri is that we provide and have a partnership with the Psychological Services Clinic at the University of Missouri. Trained professionals with the Psychological Services Clinic provide skills for psychological recovery. This is a service that's offered by telepsychology. It helps our farmers and their families build stress reduction skills and resilience. Our trained professionals at the University of Missouri offer a brief 1 to 5 hour session. Again, this is an evidence-based program. It's individually tailored for an intervention focusing on strengthening coping skills to manage stress, building resilience, and supporting good behavioral health. We also are looking at other ways in which we can provide outreach services on a day-to-day basis by looking at providing resources through our web-based resource center, as Courtney indicated. We also have a tailored toolkit that we provide at the community-based level to all of our participants who are actively involved with Missouri's rural health and mental health services. You can also access Missouri's mental health programs, services, and our resources at the MU Extension Show Me Strong Farm Families website. In closing, MU Extension and its collaborative partners holistically support our communities by offering credible programs, as well as helping them access services and connecting them to reliable resources.
Well, thank you, Karen and Courtney. We do have just a few moments. If you have a question, please insert that into the chat. We'll pass that along to our first two presenters. Karen, maybe a good place to start is how do you handle how do you address the handoff between what our extension professionals and campus-based folks do with mental health professionals? How do you kind of know when's the right time to find a more intensive type of help or assistance?
That's a really good question. And that happens quite often. We get farmers a lot who call and other professionals who call and are concerned about a farmer or a family member and not really for sure about when is that time that they should be passing off. Anytime that you feel uncomfortable or anytime that you see or hear farmers having behavior or signs or symptoms of mental health, that is the time to pass off. We need to remember that as MU Extension specialists, we are non-clinical, we're educators, we're not clinicians. So it's real critical to make sure that we are passing off our farmers to the ones who are clinically based and clinically trained, like we have here at the University of Missouri, by providing services through our Psychological Services Clinic.
Courtney, can you give us a little idea, look in your crystal ball, and where is the center, where do you think it's headed? What are some of the issues, multi-state needs that you're hearing about that you think the center is well positioned for in the next year or 2 years? Look down the road for us.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great question. So one thing that I hear is about the approach that we're taking, and that we do have so many extension partners. I think that Karen has done a very good job of highlighting that extension's role in this is really what extension's strong point is, which is being able to provide educational programs so that people have research-based information and can do their best to support themselves in their own lives as well as others in their communities. And I think that in this effort, extension is staying true to its roots in that way, and expanding the types of topics and conversations that we're having. I think that one of the things I often hear is, well, when you look at the things that are stressful for people in agriculture, so much of that is outside of any one person's control. So what do we do about things like fluctuating commodity prices? And what do we do about lack of access to mental health providers? And what do we do about all of these things? And I feel like what the center is setting us up for is being able to take a both and approach of there are people who are having a hard time right now, and any one of us can reach out and check in with someone, and that can make all the difference in the world that day for that person. So it's the ability to check in now and be able to help cope with stresses. But we do also have things like in an interest group that focuses on agribusiness and farm financial decision making, so that we can work upstream a little bit and not only be responding to or reacting to the stresses that come up, but trying to help with the stress, the precursors of the stress. So how do we deal with those things that create stress for agricultural producers? And that's one thing that I feel very proud of with this effort, is that there is that dual mindset of looking at what's happening right now for people and how can we try to change circumstances so that we don't see so much stress coming up for folks.
Thanks, Courtney. I'm reminded of President Winterstein's comments this morning about extreme collaboration. And I think what you've just heard from both the regional center and from Karen's comments is that this is a wonderful example of how we are sharing, networking across state lines in that spirit of extreme collaboration. And it's been, effective at the bottom line in supporting our programs. But I think in your case, Courtney, some of the resources that you put together that helps us all across, helps all of the land grants across the region. Why don't we shift gears just slightly? The next issue that we want to highlight is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Serving the needs of all audiences is a foundation of how we do our work. And while we've always had a strong commitment to addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in our programs, our workforce, in our relationships with our audiences and communities, recent events have clearly shown that we must be ever vigilant to this, and we can do better. One of the emerging efforts to help us do this organizationally is a program called Coming Together for Racial Understanding. Dr. Rachel Welborn is the Associate Director for the Southern Rural Development Center, which serves the 13 universities, land-grant universities in the southern states. We've asked Rachel to discuss innovative leadership approaches on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to offer some insights from the Coming Together for Racial Understanding initiative, which several states here in the North Central region are participating in. Rachel, go ahead.
Well, good morning. I think it's still morning for everybody for the next few minutes anyway. And I really appreciate having this opportunity. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer that I am not a DEI expert, but I have had the privilege over the past 3 or 4 years to spend a lot of time with people who are thinking deeply. And so appreciate this opportunity to share. I'm going to see if my slides get started good. How's this looking? I'm seeing Jeff nod, so thank you, Jeff. As we have spent some time over the past few years, we've spent time with extension leaders, and we've also spent time with experiment station leaders that are really thinking very deeply about DEI. And so I'm going to start with the experiment station side. And I love this title of inclusive excellence because I think that really gets at the heart of DEI. It's not inclusion just for the sake of inclusion, but it's really seeking something deeper than that. So one of the questions that we asked during this time with them is, what does that even mean and how would we be better together? So I pulled a few of a long list of very good comments, but I wanted to share these. How would we be better if we did this work together? And you can see the glance. I'm not going to read all of these, but I see a lot of things about looking at new solutions to new problems, seeing problems more broadly, being more relevant, and challenging our assumptions. These are very important in our work. And I'm going to start here and leave this in the middle. If we do wonders with one set of eyes, imagine seeing the world from various sets of eyes. So just to lay a context here and just appreciative of these thoughts that can get us started as we talk through. So now I'll tell a little bit about what Robin shared, and that is some work that we started with the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy. In 2016, they challenged a group of us to think about how can Extension step into this world of leading dialogues around race in communities that were struggling. And from that, the Coming Together for Racial Understanding effort was birthed. As we think about this work, I get a lot of questions about how is this different from what any other DEI training that we're doing in university settings or in other places. And what's really different here is that this is a dialogue to change process. We get a lot of pushback of, oh, we've talked enough, we need to do action. Well, yes, we do need to do action, but it also needs to be action that's informed and that we're thinking about together so that it gets to meaningful change. And we do that through building trust and fostering understanding. So that's the importance of the dialogue as a piece of this effort. And it really undergirds really why we're doing this effort. The way this unfolds is we do national trainings where we bring together state training teams. So it's a train the trainer approach. If there are multiple land grant institutions in a given state, we encourage those state teams to be across institutions. So we're really building that foundation from the state level. Those individuals then go back home. They work with other extension professionals within their state to train them up to help lead the dialogues, but also doing our internal work, because we've got to be true to the integrity of what we are hoping to see in communities, and we've got to do our own work. And then we launch into community dialogues, and these are multiple week dialogues. They happen over time, but they again build trust and lead to action that is formed by that dialogue process. So here's where we are so far. We've had 3 national trainings, and you can see that you might gather from this one down here in the 2021, that the one that we did this year, not a big surprise, was done virtually completely, while the other 2 were face-to-face. There are pros and cons to virtual. Y'all could probably list as many of them as I can, but we did learn a lot from this group, and we're very thankful for these pioneers that jumped in and made this effort with us. But you can see where we are so far. The 2018 and 19 got out there a little bit ahead of the curve before COVID, and so they've been able to do some more on the ground work. But over the past few years, we have shifted a lot to figuring out how to do some things virtually. So what are we learning from these groups? We talk across 4 kinds of areas of change. One is personal, that is how I'm thinking inside of my own head. And then the next is interpersonal, how I'm working across with other people, more in one-on-one situations. Institutional, that is what it sounds like, it is your institution. And then culturally is just how do we do business? And maybe that's not written policy. There are a lot of things that we're learning in this work, but our states that have been doing this work for a while now, I'm pulling out a few of them just to highlight. And that is personally increasing empathy and listening. So that goes back to doing my own work. Interpersonally, building more diverse relationships. This is both professionally and also informally. And I really love that this work, even though it's really focused on community dialogues, is changing the way we think about our institutions too. And our people that are in this work are now reporting that they're applying DEI lenses to all of their program areas, thinking about all of their programs differently because they have been engaged in this dialogue process. And my favorite of the whole sheet is this last one here, normalizing conversations on race. What would it be like if we all got very comfortable talking honestly about the things that concern us and trouble us and working on those together? And I think at this point, we're seeing the needle shift in that area, but there's much more work that we can do. So what are some struggles and what are some opportunities as we move forward? So I'm going to start again, going back to our time with experiment station professionals, and we asked them what were the top challenges they were facing. And here are the challenges that they came up with. And the first one's probably not a big surprise, but recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce. And I liked that they put in also the supportive inclusion. So it's not just about getting them to sign on, it's keeping them there and supporting them in the process. I'm looking for ways to grow the partnerships across the 3 different kinds of land grant institutions, addressing funding challenges and disparities across those different 3 systems, and then reaching and working with underserved populations. This group put together also some action ideas, and I have not seen where those have gone, but if you're part of that group, I would just kind of call you back to that to say, what were those things and where have we made progress? Because it was a very great list of very actionable ideas there. On the extension side, we have been asking our teams that have been very active in this work, where do they feel very supported internally? And where are some areas where they could use some more work in being supported? So I've just brought out the highlights here. On the ways that they feel most supported is their administrators are trusting them to lead this effort, and that's always good. You want to know that your leadership has got your back in this work and they trust you. So those teams chosen well. Where we have multiple land grants in a state where those are there and they're working together, they're finding great value in those relationships. The administrators are giving them time to do this work. This is very important. This is time-intensive effort, very time-intensive effort. As I mentioned, it happens over several weeks. So instead of this being, oh, let me just add something else to your plate, it's administrators that are really supporting their teams well are clearing off the plates to give them time for this. And then colleagues around them valuing the work. And then this last one, administrators demonstrate support in the face of dissension or risk. We have seen some of that in the past year in the political climate, and just knowing that your administrator has your back is pretty important. But then where are some areas where we could grow? We could get better. These are areas that they have not felt as supported. This first one's interesting. I think this is true across research and extension, that work is given sufficient weight on my annual evaluation. Doing DEI well and learning to work with new partners well and new audiences well takes more time than doing things the way we've always done them. So as administrators, how are you valuing that? How are you valuing that commitment of time, and how does it look differently than the usual way of doing evaluation? Some of these other areas you might expect, having office staff and having funding to support the work is very important. Giving time to work on this effort, which is kind of interesting because it's almost the opposite of, oh, administrators gave me time or I don't have time. So we saw a split. Some states, they're giving them time, and some places they're really, really not. So it's a challenge. You could see the challenge on both sides of that coin. And this last one, administrators are actively participating. They're not just saying, you can go do this, it's a great idea, but they're saying, let's go do this together. So as leaders, thinking about that and how you can actively be a part of this work as you lead by doing with them. Where are we going in the future? I'm going to answer that question up front, Robin. There's some new funding that our effort is getting, and we're very thankful for that. It's coming through NIFA and through the Extension Foundation. So we're thankful to share with you that that's going to give us the opportunity to build some capacity in existing states. We've had some people that have retired or taken different positions. Y'all know how that is. So we're going to be able to work with those states that have lost capacity to help rebuild that. We also plan a new training for states that have not yet participated. So if that is you, just know that that's coming. We have a research team that is supporting continuous learning here. And then we're also going to be working with ECOP Action Team and a DEI fellow that's coming from this work. And you can see here this list on the side, the kinds of things that we anticipate doing with that, working with the DEI fellow. And that's developing an information sharing system, establishing some metrics, looking at some promising programs, looking for ways to increase that collaboration that we discussed among the different institutions, and then developing an extension DEI community. So I realize this is somewhat extension focused by the way the funding has come, but there may be some really good opportunities for the experiment station leaders to look at this with us also. So I'm going to stop with one last thing, and then I will turn the mic back over, and that is, a challenge. Do something. So this is one thing. If you were on that experiment station, you saw this. And I had one or two who still email me every once in a while and say, I have my list, I'm working on my actions. But if you could do one thing that would have the greatest positive impact on exclusive excellence in the next 5 to 10 years, what is that one thing you would do? And what are 2 or 3 action steps you would take in the next 30 days to advance that one thing? And I will pop this up for a second and leave you with that thought.
Rachel, it might also be, I think, a value just to kind of recap, if you can, once you're seeing these teams and the training happen, just reinforce again, what's the ultimate impact that we should be aspiring to? What's the return on that training investment?
And I'd go back to the slide I showed a moment ago about those 4 areas of change. What if we could get internally within our own house and also with our communities where we're working, whether you're on research or extension, what if we really could get to a place where we could talk openly and honestly in ways that were productive, that built trust, and that together would move us toward action that we all agreed would make change that's meaningful? What if we could do that together? To me, that's the point. That's where we're headed.
And from your experiences in the Southern region, are there particular things that you would like to say that extension and research could work on together? Are there some collaborative experiences that you've seen unfold in the Southern region that would be good for us here in the North Central to sort of be thinking about?
I can share one example from the extension side. We have had over this past year, the AEA and ASRED, our Southern region, the 1890 partners, have worked together, and this is just extension. They have walked through the dialogue series that we use in communities virtually over the past year. And we have spent time together with them in roughly 2-hour sessions each time. They have been thoughtful, they have been engaged, and they have a list of, I believe it is 3 themes and 7 action ideas that they will be exploring together as a region. I think it would be very interesting to look at that across extension and research. What are your opportunities together? So that's one model, to actually be a part of the dialogue yourself, but apply, instead of having community be a geographic place you live, we applied the word community to the land grant system in the South and looked at it that way.
Well, thank you, Rachel. As a reminder, you can drop a question in the chat at any time, and we'll either try to direct it to the appropriate speaker, or you may also find that we may respond to you later, either back in the chat, or if we know who is asking the question and you miss the speaker, we can do a little follow-up with you later. So please use the chat function. Dwayne James is the Urban County Director and County Engagement Specialist for the University of Missouri Extension in St. Louis County. It's one of Missouri's most populated counties. He has a range of experiences and responsibilities that touch on audiences involving youth, families, businesses, neighborhoods, communities. Dwayne also served as a council member for the city of Ferguson from 2006 to 2016. Dwayne is chair for the MU Extension Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Council, and you will hear from him. It's important that DEI not be treated as an add-on. It needs to be interwoven in everything we do. Dwayne, I'll turn to you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks, Robin, and hello, everyone. As Robin said, my name is Dwayne T. James. I reside in the St. Louis area. As we say here, I was born and raised here. 25 years of engineering experience prior to coming to Extension. Been with Extension since 2016 as the St. Louis County Program Director, Engagement Specialist, and I'm here today to talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion as the chair of the EDIC Council. And as Rachel said, none of that basically shows that I'm an EDI expert. So I come with a breadth of passion, of different experiences, but none of them are specialists in the EDI. But I'm here to share my thoughts, share some ideas, and expand upon the work that EDIC is doing, and then also get into the Inclusive Excellence Framework that Rachel discussed a little bit as well. All right, EDIC was formed in 2019 by Dr. Marshall Stewart, the Vice Chancellor for MU Extension and Engagement. So we're working to build this culture that exemplifies the values of the MU Inclusive Framework. The council is composed of 20 individuals from across the state that has diverse backgrounds, unique strengths, all with that passion to do the work of EDI. And I do mean work of EDI. We work with all facets of Extension, partner with our sister institutions, partner with other land grant institutions as well to ensure that the ideas and plans that we correlate meet those pressing needs that are in our community, and then also provide access to the best practices that are available. There's no reason to recreate the wheel when there's work that's actually have been proven that's actually providing that impact. How do we provide that access into the people that work, play, and live in Missouri? So as mentioned, EDIC's efforts are based on the Inclusive Excellence Framework of MU. These 5 dimensions of the framework include access and success, institutional climate, education and scholarship, institutional infrastructure, and community engagement. And so these are the dimensions. There's goals that align with each of these dimensions. There's the plans that drive the goals, and then there's milestones that are associated with each of these as well. And so during our time today, I just want to spend a few moments going through these dimensions and seeing how they actually align with the work that we need to do to make a better future. And so Rachel gave you that challenge. What are you going to do in the next year that actually works towards this inclusive excellence? I'm just going to have a short discussion as far as some of the dimensions and some of the pathways that we need to consider as we go through this framework. So access, addressing inequalities. We've heard, we continue to have conversations, we've read about it, people have demonstrated about it. There's inequalities that face us every single day. And it's our responsibility to address these inequalities. It's our responsibility because it's ours to fix. It's not someone else's to basically fix those inequalities. And so as part of doing that, we have to make access and make space for diverse voices and thoughts. So if you're in a space and you're looking around the room and everyone looks the same, everyone comes from the same area, has on the same clothes, eats the same meals, looks at the same TV shows, are all the same news stations, then there's something that might need to get fixed in that regard. So we might need to look to see exactly if we're bringing in those diverse audiences, if we're bringing in those diverse spaces to ensure that we actually have are providing access to the people that we're trying to serve. And so it's ours to basically address those inequities that might not be providing that space and those opportunities. Looking at our climate and developing that culture. And so a lot of the times we're trying to change our culture by recruiting diverse individuals. We have to make sure that our culture is actually in place. So then when we recruit those diverse individuals, that they actually feel comfortable, they feel respected, they feel valued in the space that we're trying to recruit them into. So we have to work on that culture. And so that retention actually improves because that culture is actually welcoming in that environment. And so building that culture means laying that foundation where DEI is discussed with every juncture, every pathway, every decision, every program. It's not something that we just add to the agenda item and say, all right, we check the box on DEI, but we actually go through the work and saying, all right, how does DEI affect this idea, affect this program, affect this funding stream? And so doing that work, so we actually develop the goals, develop those milestones with DEI in every facet and in every function of the work that we're trying to do. All of us have a responsibility. All of us have a role in that work. It is not just that DEI director, that vice president of diversity that is in charge of making sure that that climate is changed, that culture is changed, those goals are actually aligned. It's all of us, and we have to make sure that when we're talking about building this culture, that we all take that role and responsibility in that work. Next is education. And so we talked about training. Access to training is very, very critical. Access to training and how it's actually implemented is actually critical. Providing multiple opportunities for training is essential because diversity is very, very broad, is very deep, is very expanding. And so one opportunity for diversity training does not meet all the needs and all the issues that are actually out there. So providing those multiple opportunities, those multiple avenues to ensure that the diversity training actually meets the needs and impacts the masses. And so it might be a good foundation to have that one training that actually starts out on the conversation, but then making sure that you follow that up with additional opportunities and additional avenues. And then empowering those individuals to have those critical conversations and dialogue. So you go to a training, you're all ready and you're all thinking about how you can change or improve the environment and the culture that you're in. But then we actually have to have the conversation and the dialogue, and we have to empower people to make sure that if something is addressed from a DEI standpoint, they feel comfortable in actually speaking up, that the supervisor, that the director, that the department head is listening to what that person might actually bring to the table. And so, and then we need to support them. And I'm repeating the stuff that Rachel basically said as well. Support them in that regard, listen to them and see exactly how we can be flexible and we can be open to the conversations, to the thoughts, to the dialogues as well. Training is great. It's the work that happens after the training that is actually more great. And then that infrastructure. And so building that infrastructure where we're monitoring the impacts that are actually developed. So we have the dimensions, we have the goals, we have the milestones, but we actually have to monitor the impact just to ensure that we're meeting those measures, that we're going out and seeking input, working with others, getting suggestions from other individuals, from other groups, from other institutions, from other land grants to see how we can improve upon the work that we're doing in this DEI space, and then adjust, and then keep adjusting, and then keep adjusting as necessary. Because the community that we're trying to serve is adjusting and growing as well. So we have to be flexible and adjust as we do this work. And then, so we talked about 4 facets of the inclusive excellence framework, but let's not forget community engagement, because community is the ones that we're trying to work with. They're the ones that we're trying to serve. They're the ones that all the plans and the procedures and the policies and the programs actually matter to. So let's go out and actually engage the community because they have that lived experience. They're the best ones to teach us how to do this DEI work. So let's go out, engage, listen, and learn, and so we can actually be educated in that process as well. And so I just want to leave you, it was a short time, I just want to leave you real quick with this quote from John Wesley. Do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways that you can, in all the places that you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can. And so I saw this, it spoke to me. It just is a reminder to do the work by any means necessary, by all means available to you in every way possible, everywhere you are, with everyone that you encounter for as long as you can. Doing DEI doesn't mean I'm going to do it today and then I'm going to take a break tomorrow. It means doing the work at every opportunity. And when it's not being spoken about, when it's not being shared, when it's not being discussed, take it upon yourself at that point to say, oh, let's have a conversation about diversity. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dwayne. Great sentiments to end on, but we do have a moment here. We can pause if someone would like to have a question answered by either one of the last two speakers. We can do that now. Dwayne, one thing that you said that really stuck, I mean, several things did, but in particular, I was sort of struck by the idea that, as administrators, we think about training and we think about the opportunities that we want to create for our staff. So you said that, training is great, but the hard work happens once the training is over and faculty and staff come back. I'm just sort of curious, in your experiences, what creates that right environment for sharing? You discussed about the importance of being open and receptive to how we address things. Any, good sort of ideas that you could pass along to administrators who are watching this about how do you create that environment?
That's a great question, and I don't have the nuggets. So I see Rachel is shaking her head as well. So Rachel, if you want to step in as well, that's great. I just know when we go to training, we come back, let's just have a conversation during a staff meeting. Let's just have a conversation during a break, just to say, what did you learn? How can it actually be applied? Let's test it. Let's try it out. Let's figure out if that can actually be implemented in something that we actually do. And if it doesn't work, then don't exclude the training and say, oh, no one else is going to that training. Let's just use the best nuggets of that training to continue to do the work, or that next person would actually go and find some other nuggets. Sometimes we count on that one person going to the training, coming back and being the expert in everything. And no, it's going to take the different avenues, the different thoughts, the different think tanks to actually make sure that we come up with the best solutions. And so I just say, go to the training, have the conversations, bring it back to see exactly how it could be implemented, and then do the work, do the investment after you made that initial financial investment with actually implementation.
Great, Dwayne. Rachel, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I would just super echo that. A lot of times in universities, we have required DEI trainings, and that's good. We need those. But I love what Dwayne just said that says, let's come back and have a dialogue about that. So it's not just we went to something I maybe did or didn't pay attention, but I got my box checked. But it's, let's come back and say, okay, wow, what did you get from that? And how can we make it real in what we're doing from day to day? So, wow, perfect answer. Thanks, Dwayne.
Well, thank you to both of our last two speakers. A reminder that you can drop questions in the chat box at any time. If we don't get back to them, we'll try to put the answer in a general chat reply, or if need be, we'll have your name and we can follow up where that might merit discussion. So also, just as a reminder, we'll be providing you with copies of the slides as well. We'll tell you a little bit more how to do that a little later on in the mini land grant, but we will make available some of the visuals that you have seen. I'd like to turn now to my fellow executive director and colleague for the North Central Regional Association that works with our agricultural research station directors. Jeff Jacobsen is here to introduce the next regional topics. Jeff?
Thank you, Robin, and good afternoon, everybody. We're at Michigan State University Eastern Time Zone, so I welcome you to your afternoon. A couple of pieces of information that I'd like to share relative to the Research Association that builds upon what Robin described in his intro. Myself and Chris Hamilton, who is in Madison, Wisconsin, she and I helped to manage the research portfolio funded by Hatch multi-state funds of about 80 projects. So that's one of the facets that the regional associations do. And then at the both regional and national level, over the near legacy efforts with our colleagues from CARET and others. And then policies and I guess fixes, if you will, for the upcoming Farm Bill are part of what we collectively are involved in the regional association. So that was just a quick tour of some additional facets of the regional associations. So we're going to now pivot and focus on digital agriculture, smart farms, and just those words build upon what Dr. Winterstein touched upon in her opening remarks. There are so many different dimensions of that topic that we could spend the next 8 hours on. However, we have focused our efforts on the plant window and an animal window, if you will. We're going to have 2 guest speakers who will provide roughly about 7-minute presentations, and then we'll do Q&A. And I, like the prior moderators have said, please feel free at any time to put questions or comments in the chat function, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. With that, I would introduce Jared Decker, who's an associate professor. He's the WORDAC chair in animal sciences at the University of Missouri. He has expertise in livestock genetics and computational genomics applied to genomic enhanced EPDs. He also works with genotype by environment interactions, fertility, population structure of cattle breeds. Our second guest speaker, who actually will go first, is Natalia de Leon, professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She has expertise in plant breeding and quantitative genetics using phenotypic, genotypic, and expression data with maize and other plant species. So with that, I would welcome Natalia to take the floor.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am going to share my screen. Okay, well, thank you so much. As Jeff indicated, we are going to go through this presentation, and I'm going to first focus on the idea of plants, and to start and provide a little bit of context. I think a lot of what we're going to discuss today is the obvious issues that are brought by an increasing population growth and number of climate concerns that sort of demand from us to increase the sustainability and the efficiency of crop production worldwide. In thinking about more locally for this group, specifically the North Central region, it's understood that about 25% of the farmland in the Midwest that is in crop production is currently unprofitable. So there are a number of challenges that we need to consider when thinking about how digital technologies and technologies in general can help us improve the efficiency of the research endeavor. And so as I thought about the comparison of plants and animals, I mean, immediately to me, there are sort of 2 things that make plants and animals different. There are many, many others that make them very similar. One of them is that historically plant research have focused primarily on experimentation. And that is mostly because plants generally can be cloned, they can be replicated, they can be multiplied. And that's something that thinking about animals sometimes is a little bit more limiting. And then the other thing that I think plant researchers have focused a lot about has been this idea that the environment has a very significant influence on how phenotypes are expressed. And so the idea that we need to understand genotypes, environments, and the interactions of genotypes and environments in relevant production settings has been something that plant researchers have invested a lot of energy on. With the need to increase efficiency and the need to increase efficiency in a sustainable way, however, I would say that the last 2 decades have brought an enormous amount of work and efforts in this idea of improving the ability to predict the performance of plants to increase efficiency of plant productivity. So as we think about what are the technologies that have made a difference in the last 2 decades, thinking about how to match crop varieties and input application within fields, technologies such as variable rates in precision agriculture in general provide this opportunity to be able to optimize the application of different routines to different crop and different plant varieties in general. The challenge becomes that in order to find patterns on the data, there is this need for constantly acquiring new data in relatively large amounts of data. And it comes through different forms. more recently, certainly through the acquisition of imaging devices and sensors. And with that, there is also the need to advance the computational methods. And we talked about already about the importance of artificial intelligence and all the efforts that are part of that to identify complex trends and develop these prediction models that will help us increase efficiency. And the ultimate goal is to combine plant performance and genomic information to be able to better tailor cultivars to particular growing conditions and locations, again, to optimize the use of inputs and also to be able to protect the environment as we maximize that efficient productivity. So one of the, as I again thought about when I was talking to Jeff about what would be one of the ideas or the things that would be important to share with this group is thinking about where are our gaps in knowledge, what are the components that will help us advance in this area of digital agriculture. And I think I grouped them in three main themes. One is technology development and application. The need not only to continue to develop, but also to be able to test and to scale all of these technologies all the way from field to satellite, and think about not only the existence of the technology, but how we can make them available to a broader community. So thinking about the cost, how to deal with technology transfer, how to provide the support that allow the use of these technologies throughout time and at different conditions across different fields into the broader community, as I mentioned before. Tied up with that is sort of the other side of these technology usage is the ability to advance computational infrastructure in analysis. And indeed, even though it is true that not only the structure, but the overall power of computers continues to increase, I would argue that the data acquisition is increasing at the same or a greater rate. So the need not only for creating the proper infrastructure for computational, but the ability to be able to access it at all times. And that was also alluded to in the discussion. A lot of the research that is done is very extensive in terms of space. So the need to have access to that computational availability, and then the ability to archive information and archive it in a way that will be not only accessible, but meaningful to those that are ready to use it. And then the third part, a big theme that I thought about is the idea of broadening the use of new breeding technologies to make transformative changes in cultural development, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking here things like gene editing, genome-based accelerated breeding, and rapid cycling. And all of these technologies are available. The point that I want to make here is that the level by which they are funded at the public sector is very limited. I will use the word here substantially underfunded, and what I mean here is maybe 10 to 100-fold a scale on the need in order to make it cost effective and really be able to be used. And of course, in order to be successful, the goal will be to be able to combine all of these three areas to maximize success. So I guess what I'm saying is that there is a clear need and a significant growth in the area of developing interdisciplinarity in the research that we do, and also interdisciplinarity at a scale that will make it meaningful, from computers to sensors to the ability to measure phenotypes in the field to genomic technologies and the ability to access them at a field scale. And to sort of wrap up my presentation, I just wanted to present maybe one example of such an attempt, and I am just mentioning one of many, which is the Genomes to Fields. And as listed in this slide, you will see that it involves a lot of institutions that are represented in this meeting today. And this is an effort focusing on evaluating diverse varieties, initially of maize, across a wide landscape of North America, and be able to collect information, as I mentioned, including phenotypic information, genotypic information, whether soil metadata, and then provide an infrastructure to be able to test and deploy new technologies. And the most important thing is to be able to do all of these and then provide the data on a public to the public researchers widely. So to summarize my comments for today, I hope I was able to share my thoughts about how plant research as a science has evolved dramatically in the last 2 decades and has become highly digitalized. The need for investment in technology development and deployment, computational infrastructure and breeding technologies to a scale that allows not only the ability to evaluate cultivars, but be able to do that in a way that allows to test and scale these technologies. And then I didn't specifically mention these, but certainly the public sector has the unique mission of training future plant scientists, and being able to do that in a relative context is truly imperative. When I talk about interdisciplinarity, the ability for researchers to be able to speak the languages, as ISU President Winterstein mentioned today, you have a mix of engineers, sensory specialists, computational biologists, computational scientists and biologists all in the same room. We have to be able to train the students to be able to communicate with all those individuals that are sitting at the table. The volume and the speed of information creates opportunities as well as challenges, and especially when they are done at a scale that is critical. And public sector is benefiting from research infrastructure such as the Genomes to Fields and other similar efforts. And I would argue that more investment on similar efforts that connect, that are distributed across a number of different institutions and looking to interdisciplinary training are very important in this context. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and let Jared take on. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we had this idea of smart farms and digital agriculture, and this got me thinking, you know, digital technology is currently impacting all parts of our life. And I found it a little comical when I did a Google search for digital technologies or artificial intelligence. All of the images that come up are these humanoid robots with this white exoskeleton. And that's not how digital technologies and artificial intelligence actually looks. Digital technologies is Netflix or other streaming services suggesting the next movie that I watch, or an online company reminding me to buy this product that I bought 30 days ago, or cars that park themselves or drive themselves. There's many ways that digital technologies are constantly influencing our lives, but it doesn't look like a humanoid robot. Digital agriculture will impact all parts of agriculture. And as Natalia was talking about, it's already impacting many parts of crop production, but we'll see decision support tools and smarter ways and more technology-driven ways to do all types of things. And this will lead to more precise management, more precise breeding. But these solutions, these technologies will impact many, many different parts. Now, if we think about the extension side of things for just one moment, one of the concerns that I would have is often when we see these technologies introduced, it leads to more vertical integration within an industry. And often this vertical integration often threatens family farms and leads to larger and larger operations. But I'm hopeful, and I try to give the people, the farmers and ranchers I talk to, the hopeful message if they are simply at the forefront of adopting these technologies, they'll put themselves in a competitive position to continue to be sustainable, to continue to be profitable in a way that their operation will continue for generations to come. But it will be a challenge, and there will be operations that simply refuse to adopt new technologies, and my assumption is that many of those will simply go away. Now, in current applications of digital technology, smart farms, and animals, much of how we're seeing these technologies used is how we measure novel new traits. I love this quote from Mike Coffey. In the age of genomics, phenotype is king. DNA technology has become increasingly, our buying power for genomics has just skyrocketed in terms of the amount of genomic data we can create and the number of animals that we can either sequence or genotype. And so in terms of digital technology, smart farms, it's my opinion that we don't need more data. We need more of the right data. We need more of data that is helping us identify those animals and plants that are going to allow operations to be more sustainable, have a smaller environmental footprint, be raised in a way that is socially acceptable, and of course be profitable. So some of the examples that we have in animal agriculture is we have near infrared spectra that we use to look at milk. And the simple thing there is to measure the different components of milk, the fat, the protein, etc. Well, one of the really exciting things is from this data that was collected to look at milk fat, you can actually predict a dairy cow, whether she's pregnant or open. You can predict her feed intake. From this very dense, high throughput data, you can predict with machine learning all of these different traits of the milk cow. Some of the projects that we're working on in my group with collaborators is we're using a system from a company called CLOC, which is a green feed system. The cow sticks her head in, she eats a little treat. As she's eating that treat, it's measuring the gases that she's breathing out. One that in Europe, they've used this to try to lower the greenhouse gas emissions of cattle, but it also gives us a picture of that animal's metabolic state, which I'm interested in using that data to better understand the efficiency and the metabolism of animals out in the open and not in confinement. We have data and machine learning from various cameras. We also are looking at 3D cameras to measure the surface area of animals. If you know the surface area of an animal, you know its basic baseline metabolic rate again. Again, looking at that efficiency. There's been private sector solutions that have used machine learning to look at automated quality control. So various beef producers report in birth weights. Some of those birth weights are actually measured with a scale and is kind of true data. Other of those birth weights are measured by taking a tape measure around the calf's foot and basically predicting the animal's birth weight. So it's not as high quality of data. With machine learning, you can kind of take those birth weights and split them into 3 different piles of actual scale weights, tape weights, and then basically bogus weight. There's another company that's helping look at automated feed recording and management. This is actually a livestock performance analytics. It's a spinoff from one of our land grant universities. And then we'll see many more uses of environmental sensors. Digital agriculture is hard. It's going to be hard. And so why is that? It's because digital agriculture is interdisciplinary. It combines computer science, engineering, animal breeding, genomics, evolution, reproduction, nutrition. When you get all of these very different disciplines into one room, it takes more work to actually make a fruitful collaboration. So one of the things that I wanted to mention briefly about is how do we actually initiate these collaborations? I feel that at the University of Missouri, I've been extremely supported in starting these new kind of smart farm collaborations. And there's two ways that, in my experience, this has happened. The first was in response to the Data Ag call from the National Science Foundation. Rob Kallenbach, who's our Associate Director for Extension in the College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources, Chi-Rin Xu, who's the Director of our Informatics Institute, and Susan Renaud, who's the Director of the MU Connector, which helps for broader impacts in NSF grants. The three of them got together and organized a think tank where they brought together investigators from computer science, engineering, agriculture, etc. And we basically had an entire day to discuss ideas about how we could actually implement data into agriculture. And so from that first meeting, Derek Brake and I, Derek Brake is a nutritionist here in Animal Sciences. We met Guy D'Souza, who's a computer vision or robotics vision specialist. And from that first meeting, we were actually able to get funding from the USDA to create a 3D cattle camera system. And so those administrators putting together time and space and food to actually get different people together talking really helped initiate that interdisciplinary collaboration. The other thing that's happened is I've actually received internal funds that's allowed us to purchase or manufacture devices that allow us to collect high throughput data from internal funding. So there's actually been internal funding to support collaborations across disciplines. And so these two examples is really something that has helped me kind of launch into this area of digital agriculture and smart farms. And so I really am grateful for administrators who are willing to put forth that effort. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Thank you, Jared and Natalia. I recognize we've gone over slightly. I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to ask a question that I think would generate some interest. I'm going to do that second. I want to remind everybody that we will restart at noon Central Time, and please use the attendee hub to access that, where we'll be talking about future opportunities with Dr. Marshall Stewart and others. Building upon that, a question for either or both of you, building upon the notion of the future, and you've touched upon this in your remarks. If I think about the students, the graduate students that are going to be part and inherit whatever you two fine researchers are going to be contributing to and training, what do those students look like? What kind of background are they going to ideally have, if you will, both the academic coursework, the training, and so on, to make this movement in digital agriculture successful?
Well, I can start commenting and Jared can add to that. But so I think we need to think about the generation that we are training at this time is the so-called Generation Z, which you can say if it is a cause or a consequence. By nature, these are individuals that most likely have less of a agriculture background, but they are more in tune with digital technology since a very early age. I would say they tend to be multitaskers, and they are very entrepreneurial, very independent, very global, and they want the vitality of this interdisciplinarity that we are talking about. So it's almost like it's the perfect combination of the personalities or the types of approaches that students will have with the needs or the things that we are talking about. So my argument is that it's up to us, the trainers, and the institutions that host us to get up to that agility, to that ability to connect across many disciplines. And I think with that, I'm going to stop. And because I think Jared will have more to add to that, but the right time and the right people. We need to just get our institutions to accompany that challenge.
Yeah, I would say I think in many cases there will be a sector of students who will still have training that is very much discipline specific, and they will have a place moving forward. But I think perhaps another thing that we might see is more students that are trained interdisciplinarily. So a nutrition student who takes a course in computational biology, or a genomic student who takes reproduction courses, or whatever those may be, you know, a student who's in data science but does a rotation in a machine learning lab, etc. We'll need to have a certain sector of scientists who are kind of trained across disciplines, or at least interdisciplinary research was part of their training. The other thing that I will say, and I forgot to mention this in my talk, is I think it's important that, especially as we look at evaluating researchers going forward, that we put much less emphasis on independent research, and we give more credit to team science. So you may not be the last author on a publication, but you were part of the team who helped make that high impact paper or high impact research possible. We need to make sure that if we're going to try to transition into and lead this effort towards digital agriculture, that we actually give credit to those researchers and to those students who work in interdisciplinary teams, because their dossiers are going to look very different when it comes time to evaluate for promotion, for tenure, etc. We need to realize that what's required now to actually lead the industries is this very complex interdisciplinary work, and we shouldn't be punishing people who work in that way.
Excellent reflections and contributions. Thank you both. With that, I'm going to close this grand challenge suite of panels on rural mental health, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and future leadership challenges, and then digital ag, smart farms. What I would say, we on this collective conference, whether you're an administrator, a CARET rep, a faculty member, doesn't matter. We in the North Central region have the capacity, the ability, the innovation to lead in all three of these spaces and 100 more. So with that, I would say have an abbreviated lunch, and we'll see you back here at 12 noon Central Time through the attendee hub. Thank you.